welcome to this review of my Gateron Ink black switches. This was a donation from a viewer, thanks again May. These switches have been in vogue for a while now, and I was curious about what the big deal was with these, so I'm happy to finally try them out. They come in a variety of colors and are easily distinguished by the colored transparent housing, which in the case of these black ones takes on a rather evil-looking smoky appearance. I originally dismissed these as just another MX switch with a different color, like so many of them are nowadays, but as it turns out they're actually made out of a different plastic. Gateron, who manufactured these switches, refused to elaborate on the type of plastic actually used, and in fact I couldn't find these switches listed on their website at all. Now, it's a bit of a shame that they can't reveal the plastic they used, presumably out of concern that the competition would copy them, and I guess that's fair, but it makes it hard to lend credibility to their case. I mean, they could be made out of compressed gunk for all we know. Also, it's not clear exactly what parts are made out of a different plastic. I mean, is it just a slider, or the top housing, or everything? The cost per unit tends to vary from 75 to 82 cents, which is quite expensive, more than Novelty's cream switches, which also use a non-standard plastic, so the extra costs would have to be justified with something fairly special. But in the case of the cream switches, I know it's polyoxymethylene, so I know what I'm looking at, whereas this could be anything. If I had to make a guess, it'd be UHMWPE, which is a high-impact polymer used in, among others, ballistic protection, but it also has very low coefficient of friction and high abrasion resistance, meaning it wouldn't rough up so easily, and yet it's very cheap, cheaper than POM, PBT, ABS or nylon. So if I had to pick a material for switches like this, that'd be what I would choose. It's also a thermoplastic, so amenable to molding switch bodies and sliders, I would think, so it'd be an ideal plastic in many ways. And I found out later that they do actually make sliders out of this now on some switches apparently. But the clear coloured housing reminds me more of polycarbonates if anything, and I don't have the analytical equipment necessary to determine what it actually is. In any case, I decided to match it up against the creams, as in many ways they're their closest competitors. So I took my trusty iGK61, which I usually use for testing switches like this, and outfitted the alpha block with the inks and the number row with creams to test against. Now, considering POM has a higher coefficient of friction than UHMW, if it were that, the inks should be smoother, ceteris paribus. But are they? As for the weighting, the only information provided is the actuation weight, 60 grams, and bottom out weight, 70 grams, which would suggest that the weighting is slightly lighter than that of MX Black, and very similar to that of the cream switches actually, so think of it as a medium stiff linear. It's a good weighting, not tiring to type on, nor too light to actuate it accidentally. Now, as for how they compare to the creams, this is where it unfortunately turns into a very boring review, because they feel more or less exactly the same actually. I mean, maybe if I really try to find something, I'd find a minuscule difference, but honestly, I'm sure that'd just be in my mind, and I'm confident I'd never be able to tell these apart in a blind test. Now, creams are really quite smooth linear, so that's certainly not a bad thing. I'm just a bit surprised that everyone dove straight onto these and more or less ignored the creams, even though they feel the same and they could have had them much earlier. There is a difference in sound though. The inks sound noticeably lower pitched than the creams. The sound isn't thicker or thockier or meatier or anything, it's very similar actually, just at a lower frequency. So I'd probably be able to hear a difference in keys actually, but feel? No. That makes this review rather short actually, as I've already talked about the iGK61 itself before, so I'm not going to review it again. In summary, the ink switches, or at least these black ones, feel like very smooth linears. Compared to other contact-based switches, these will hold up very nicely. Of course, if it's smoothness you want, the best choice will still be one of those modern contactless keyboards. Contact-based switches just can't compete against a good Hall effect or optoelectric switch. These do tend to be extremely light though, so if you specifically want a medium stiff switch, the inks might be a better choice. That's it for this review. Thank you for watching, I hope you enjoyed it, and following is a typing demonstration of me typing on this keyboard.